feels like almost fall. Given that it's almost September, that makes sense. Hi, I'm Chanel. I'm a recent college grad who knits, spins, and designs while they figure out a way to balance science, art, and social justice in their life. So you may notice my pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am coming to you from New Jersey, North New Jersey, close to New York City. On social media, you can find me as pipernell, Pipernell, on Instagram and Ravelry. On Facebook, I have a page that's pipernell, but with the space between Piper and Nell. And then the Ravelry group for this podcast is the Pipernell Podcast, which is also the name of this podcast, which I don't think I mentioned. Anyway, that's all the stuff that you should be able to know about contacting me. Here's a kind of overview of what I have today for you. Today is August 28th, 2017. I have a couple of news, just administration stuff to get out of the way. Then knitting, spinning, acquired, and life updates. So kind of like boring segments names this time, but I figured it made the most sense to just lump all the knitting into one and all the spinning into one. And yeah, I feel like I'm kind of back in college, back in my college episodes with the segments and kind of where I am in life right now. But enough babble. So, news. The first item I have is that the July-August Patreon giveaway, I had to roll in July and August into one because of circumstances that I talked about in last episode. So for this giveaway, I am putting up for grabs 2 balls of Drops Fable yarn. I actually have 2 balls of each colorway. This is their sock yarn, which is 75-25 superwash wool and nylon. It's definitely not merino soft, but it's also much softer than, say, like a Lion Brand or, let's see, Opal. It's softer than Opal, and I feel like it'd be a very nice hard-wearing sock yarn. I'm basically splitting my order of this fable with you. So I got 2 balls of each color. This gray multicolor does not have a name. Do any of these have a name? Nope. Okay, so this is a gray multicolor, and I believe these are both self patterning, and this knits up into kind of a checkerboard like striped pattern. And then this blue knits up into a similar pattern, but with these nice navy blues and teals and stuff. So the giveaway is for 2 balls of this yarn. You can choose 2 of this color, 2 of this color, or 1 of each color. I'm not going to judge. Whatever you do with your sock yarn. So the prompt for this giveaway is in a thread in the Ravelry group, the Pipernell Podcast, and it is, tell me about a challenge that you've recently overcome. And it doesn't have to be a long story or even that in-depth, or it doesn't have to be a serious challenge. You don't have to spill your guts, but I do want to get you thinking about something that you've overcome and just remind you of something good that's happened. So, next thing is the Spindle Along prize, which ended. The Spindle Along was my spin along that celebrated drop spindle and all sorts of hand spindle, spinning, anything that's slower than the wheel. That ended on August 16th. And so the prizes are in. I'll be talking about them later in the episode. But to tease you, they are braids of fiber from a dyer called Curly Cues. They're super pretty and soft, and the winner will get to choose one of the 2. Next thing, just wanted to plug my Patreon. So the giveaway, I'm aiming to host monthly or bi-monthly giveaways using funds that I get from my Patreon. The Patreon is a way for me to get, compensated for my work as a fiber artist, as someone who puts out content. If you like what you hear and see and you want to support my work, I am a recent college grad. I'm in debt. I am working enough to get by, but it's not always easy to buy yarn and fiber for my hobby because that requires usually disposable income, which I don't have a lot of. So if you want to help me do what I enjoy and directly get back some of those returns, then check out my Patreon, which is pipernell, Piper space Nell, and consider making a recurring donation. And last thing I have in news is that the Yarnia Kickstarter, which I talked about, Yarnia is an upcoming LYS in my area. They have a Kickstarter. I talked about this last episode. Their Kickstarter is going on until the end of August. And since today's the 28th, depending on how long it takes me to edit and upload this, it might be over by the time you see this. But you should still keep them on your radar, especially if you're in the New Jersey or New York area. Yeah? Alright, so that was it for news. That brings me to knitting. This is the fun part. So my first thing that I want to show you is an FO. It's the pair of socks that I was working on last time, but I got so addicted to the pattern that I finished them. So these are the Flatland socks, and they're very bright. They're very pink, and they're definitely blowing out my camera. So here's the pattern. I think I was only on the leg last time, only about like halfway through the leg. I got this much done in the past 2 weeks. So it took me a while to get going on this pattern. This is, by the way, they are called the Flatland socks because that's the name of the pattern. It is Flatland by Kawa Coffee on Ravelry, and it's a free pattern. It's a very well written pattern, and I'm so grateful that she's offering this for free. It is a not cabled sock, but a twisted stitch sock patterned with twisted stitches where you cross one stitch over one another. And so they're basically mini cables, and the pattern was kind of is only charted, and this is about 1 repeat. So between my fingers, that's about 1 repeat. So fairly long repeat, but once I got the hang of it, I was able to kind of at least intuit the next row. I didn't have it, like, say, memorized, like I wouldn't know if I was on like row 14 or row 20, but I would see, oh, I just worked this row, that means that these twists should twist this way and these should twist that way, and I was able to read my work and tell what I should do with the next round. And so once I got to that point, which took me about like 1.5 repeats to really get that rhythm, I kind of just took off with the socks. And I almost wanted to knit a longer leg because I like knitting the pattern so much, but I don't like my socks that long. These are mid-calf, and so I had to switch to the foot. By the way, this pattern is cuff down, and yeah, the cuff took me a while to get the hang of. I had to cast it on two separate times, three separate times. No, wait. I had 3 attempts. Yeah, so I cast on 3 times, and so I had 3 attempts at the cuff because I would cast on and then not get the cuff and the pattern of purls and twisted stitches, and then I'd have to restart because it was too much of a pain to fix. And I was so close to the beginning anyways that it was worth it to recast on. But it was so worth it. All that labor poured into this sock. It's beautiful. The heel flap flows straight from the patterning, and the slip stitches are worked into the twisted stitch pattern so that it looks like ribbing, but you also get the reinforcement that slip stitches would give your heel flap. And then on the front of the foot, you just continue the leg pattern down until you reach the toe, and then you continue in pattern of the twisted rib while decreasing, and then you Kitchener the toe. So it's a very narrow toe. I only had 8 stitches on each needle. I knit these 2 at a time magic loop. You only had 8 stitches on each needle at the end of the toe. I'm not really sure why she wrote such a narrow toe, But I mean, I think it works with the pattern because the toe kind of encompasses this middle segment. And the fit has been fine. I'll put it on. So this yarn is Zen Yarn Garden Serenity Sock in the colorway It's a Girl, explaining the super hot pink. This is taking me a while to get on. I'm talking as I'm trying to wrestle this on. Because of the twisted stitches, the fabric does draw in and creates a very snug fit. However, it's not the stretchiest fabric, so I'm having trouble getting this over my heel. There we go. Especially since I'm talking while I'm trying to put on this sock. Alright, I'm only going to put on one of the feet because I don't want to embarrass myself too much. Alright, so now it's on. It fits perfectly. I did have 2 extra stitches on the sole. That was kind of a mistake from what the pattern wrote. I didn't do an extra. I missed one of the gusset decreases, so I ended up with 30 stitches on the sole instead of 28. Well, my gauge was a little tighter, so that made the sole a little narrower than it would have been 30 stitches in the author's gauge. Anyway, but no complaints about fit. This is awesome. It feels great. I like the twisted stitches make again, draws the fabric in and makes it so cozy. And this yarn, I think, works really well with the pattern. It's semi-solid. However, it's an MCN, and I find that it's all merino cashmere nylon. I find that it's already kind of fuzzing up. I'm a little worried about how this will wear, given that I put so much work into this pair of socks. But it's so squishy, and it's such a luxury to wear. And I did get this on D-Stash, so I didn't pay full price for it. Yeah, I hope it doesn't fuzz too much, and then the stitch definition of the twist, which looks amazing. But if it fuzzes up too much, then all of that will be lost. So, yeah, I hope that wears well. I will probably do a how my socks wear at some point. A lot of podcasters have done this, and I've never done it. I want to get in on the action. So the needles I used for these, I said I did these 2 at a time magic loops. So I used a 40-inch circular needle in a size US 1 or 2.25 millimeters. My trusty Chaogu Knit Red needles, so they weren't too pointy. I think if I had used my Chaogu lace needles, it might have gone a little more smoothly just for the twists, but it's okay. It all worked out. And I had to do a little bit of thinking to adapt this pattern to 2 at a time. The pattern is written for 1 at a time sock knitting. It is needle agnostic. It doesn't specify whether or not it should be magic loop or DPNs or 2 circulars. So basically, whether or not your sock is divided into 2 or 4 sections is not mentioned. However, the pattern does lend itself to being divided into 2 segments in half. Since, let me show you once I take this sock off, because it's not that warm. It's not that cold. It was cold enough this morning that I put on my sandbloom shawl, but it's not cold enough to wear hand knit socks. So yeah, it's already fuzzing now that I took it off my foot. I hope it doesn't fuzz more, or it stops at some point. So as you can see, the patterning on the front and the back of the leg is the same. They're actually mirror images of each other. You see that this twist is mirrored on this twist over here on this side. So they're the front and back are mirror images of each other, and the sock is neatly divided in half. At first I was a little worried that there would be twists crossing over the middle, which would make 2 at a time magic loop really difficult. I don't even know if that's possible. I'd have to think about it some more. But luckily there's not, and they're evenly segmented between the 2 halves. So that was not, after some thinking about the cast on and how to follow the chart, and where exactly the chart was supposed to be divided in half, because they gave the front and the back charts. all in one long chart. After figuring out where it should be divided, it was not a problem, and I just got into the groove of it. So let's see, I talked about the twisted stitch pattern, the adapting to 2 at a time, and then the last technique discussion I want to do about this pair of socks is that I found a way to do, or I usually don't do cuff down socks, I usually do toe up, but then again, my last 2 pairs of socks have been cuff down, so maybe that's going out the window. So I don't usually do a lot of Kitchener stitch, but this Kitchener, I've been playing around with Kitchenering without the ears at the corners, and I think this worked out really well. So what I did was I did the Kitchener without the setup for the first 2 stitches. So if you know the Kitchener stitch, if you don't, then you should look it up to see what I'm talking about, because I can't recite it off the top of my head. So instead of doing the setup into the first 2 stitches, you just start with the pattern of the Kitchener stitch, and that actually eliminated the ears. So on the beginning, and then on the end, what I did was I actually went through I stopped at the last 2 stitches and treated them as 1 stitch. And that cinched in that corner, the end corner, which prevented ears. And then when I was weaving in ends, I angled the end so that it pulled that last stitch up and back. And then when I sewed it in, it would kind of lock it in and then get rid of the ears on Kitchener stitch. So yeah, those are the kind of techniques that I've been discovering. I know I heard the tip about skipping the Kitchener setup from someone else. I think it might have been Eva of the Charm of It, or someone else. I'm really not sure, but thank you so much to whoever it was. And then this pair of socks, which I've been rambling about forever now, is going to be entered into the Hipster Cal run by Jacqueline of the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast, because this pattern is woefully underappreciated. It has less than 30 projects, so I would definitely recommend checking out this pattern and all of Kawa Coffee's sock patterns. All of them are free, and why not? So, how can you resist a free pattern? And that's it for my Flatland socks. I did ramble a bit about their geeky origins last episode, so I'm not going to subject you to that again. But I'm really looking forward to wearing this pair of socks come winter. And they're going to be so nice in my winter boots and stuff. So the next project I want to talk about is a mofo, a mostly finished object. I did finish. It's bound off and everything. There are just a million ends to weave in, so I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I've only woven them in on this half. But this is the Bounce Blanket by Tin Can Knits. So this is going to be part of a baby set that I'm making on commission. And the yarn that I'm using is Drops Muscat, which is 100% mercerized cotton. It's about DK weight. And the colors, let me just point from bottom to top of the color progression. This is apple green, this is mint green, this is sky blue, denim blue, and just blue. And I did 3 repeats of this color progression, 1, 2, and 3 for 15 repeats, and then I did the 16th in the apple green so that the 2 ends of the blanket are in the same color. And the math there worked out because the pattern calls for 16 pattern repeats. It's this really nice lace pattern that the lace pattern is such that these garter rows that separate, this is white, but I think it's just called off-white. It's either off-white or white in the yarn line. But the decrease, so these lace decreases cinch in the garter stitch, garter ridges, so that they create this cool wave pattern. And it's a really fun baby blanket. And even though it's kind of lacy, but also very modern looking, and with a bold color palette, you'll get a very unique, beautiful baby blanket. And I think I have not washed this yet. I will before giving it to my client. I think these colors seem pretty fast, and so I think this blanket will wear for a long time. The needles I used US 5 needles, my Chaogu lace needles, and it did actually split the yarn a little. So if I were to reknit this pattern in this yarn, or just if I were to work with this yarn again, I would use bamboo needles, maybe like the clover needles, which are duller. And because the metal was also kind of slick on the mercerized cotton. But anyway, I am really happy with this blanket. I'll get around to weaving in the ends at some point when my lazy ass gets to it. But I might just end up casting on the other piece of the set before I get around to doing that and just procrastinate some more. So this blanket will have a coordinating cardigan. I'm thinking about using the Baby Sophisticate pattern by Linden Down. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. I didn't want to really invest in a baby cardigan pattern. And there are lots of free baby patterns out there that I thought, why not? So that pattern is a shawl collar. I think it's top down raglan. But anyway, I'm planning on using this denim blue as the main color with the rest of the colors as striped accents on the cardigan. So I will keep you updated on that. So that's a needle adjacent project. A nap. Speaking of naps, I kind of want one, but there are more projects to talk about. So the next whip that I have to talk about, the next project I have to talk about is a whip, and it is the helicase scarf, aka the DNA scarf that people are colloquially calling it. So I've gotten far on it since the last time I showed you. This progress keeper from Shamika of Mika Mika Knits is marking where I was the last time I showed you this scarf, and I've gotten at least a good 6-7 inches on the scarf since I've shown you it, and that brings me through most of the second to last chart of this pattern. So I am almost at the last chart of the pattern, and then that means that I bind off and seal up. I have to seal up the ends of this tube and do some ribbed accents to finish the scarf. But this pattern is going to be called Helicase by me, and it is representing, now that you can see all of what's going on, it represents DNA that spirals in a double helix, and then DNA, in order to function, gets split by several enzymes, so different enzymes can come in and kind of read the information encoded in DNA, and then that same enzyme, which is called helicase, has to come back and zip the DNA back up so it can be basically stored. DNA is so cool. This is also a commission project for a friend who is in biology, and he's actually about to start a new job in policy, which sounds super cool, and I'm so rooting for him. And this scarf will hopefully be a good representation of his interests. And so the yarn for this scarf is, both colors are from Pancake and Lulu, who is an indie dyer in Princeton, New Jersey. And it's in her twist fingering base, which is merino, nylon, and bamboo in bone. It's an cool off-white color. And then in her sparkle fingering base, which is merino nylon, superwash merino nylon, and stellina, blanked on that. And it's an almost black, and you can see it's a little bluish. It's an almost black color called charcoal, and I think this combination of a sparkly dark color and a light background color, it really makes the pattern pop. I don't think it would pop as much if it was a light motif on a dark background. But once I get this out to test knitters, I will ask someone to do that. And the needles I'm using are US 2s or 2.5 millimeters, Knit Picks nickel plated. I'm trying to make a better effort about mentioning my needles for every project, just I think it is important to note. And I'm just bad about forgetting. I just forget some key pieces of information sometimes, so I'm just trying to be more thorough overall. So I think the needles are working really well with the project. So a size 2 is producing a nice colorwork gauge that's not too tight and dense, still lets the scarf kind of be floppy, but it doesn't create too open of a fabric that it's that you can see the floats. The fabric is very close, and even here where I'm catching a lot of long floats, you don't see the background, the dark color really peeping through, which is great. Okay, that's it for Helicase. I hope that it's done next time I show you it. And then my next project is actually a new whip. So my next project is a new whip that you haven't seen before, and I only cast on a few days ago, even though I've been planning it for a couple of weeks now. And I was procrastinating on it because I was trying to cast off a project before I cast on a new one. And that project that I cast off was the bounce blanket, so I found it okay to start a new project. And it's living in my sock setterer bag by my lovely friend Shannon. Aww. And then, wow, it's a year old now. I got this from her last year. So, here's the project so far. This is a shawl, and it is the Moving to the Country shawl by Christy of the Yarn Cafe Creations Yarn. That's her. She's an indie dyer, and she's also a podcaster, and the name of her podcast is The Girls in the Yarn Cafe, which she does with her daughter Tristan. And so the two of them are hosting a knit-along cowl for this pattern, which is her design. Her first design, actually, so congrats, Christy. And she also sent me a copy of it, so I really did want to knit the pattern, and because it's such a nice meditative pattern, and I just happen to have the yarn for it in my stash. So I was just super thrilled that she sent me a copy of it, and I'm just really happy with this project. So this is the shawl so far. You can't really tell because it's all scrunched up on the needle and too wide to spread out, but it will be a elongated triangle. So it's wider than like a traditional triangle shawl, but it is meant to be done in multiple colors. Her samples and most of the other shawls in the cowl have used 2 colors. I'm going to use 3 colors. So my first color, this yarn is Knit Picks Hawthorn Speckled in, I think, Birthday Cake Speckle, I think. It was leftovers that I had from a pair of socks that I did in it. If you've been watching for a few episodes, you might remember that pair of socks. And then the next color I use that you kind of fade in, it's a very fade-like effect that she has. She calls it color blending. So I think it's pretty much the same as the color, like the color melting in the Find Your Fade and other Andrea Mowry fade patterns. So this variegated blue is Blue Moon Fiber Arts in Socks That Rock, but they're lightweight, and that is, the colorway is Neon Lights on Broadway. So you have like nice pinks and some yellow pops that coordinate with the speckles in the hawthorn of color 1, and then there's a lot more of the blue. Sorry, there's a truck outside. Okay. It's funny. Well, it's fitting that this was the project I cast on after binding off the blanket because I'm using the exact same needles. My US 5 or 3.75 millimeter Chaogu lace needles, which are my go-to shawl needles. So I don't want to say too much about the pattern because it's paid, but it is mostly garter stitch. You have no purls in it. It creates a nice holy fabric that's textured, and it really encourages you to play with color combinations. So I've shown you 2 of the colors. The third color, what I'm probably going to use is this cobalt blue, which is Cascade Heritage in whatever colorway this is. I don't have the label with me, but I think that coordinates with the Blue Moon Socks That Rock basically perfectly. And it'd be nice to finish the shawl, which has a lace edging, in a solid color. And this is a color that I wear quite a lot, so this will be near my face and near the edges will be near my outfit, so it will coordinate with a lot of my outfits. And that was the moving to the country shawl. I kind of want to knit on it now, but I have to resist because there's more stuff to show. But I need a break, so I'll be right back. Alright, one last knitting project. So this one I haven't shown for a couple episodes because I honestly haven't been working on it, which I feel guilty for. But it is a vintage chair runner, which I have been entrusted with by my friend Kina of the She's Crafty podcast. I'm helping her out with a project. And so this will be a chair runner, and I have approximate dimensions for it. But the pieces that I got that were already knit and I'm finishing for her are like 2 long strips of color work. And I'm still not sure if this is corn or it's a pineapple or I don't know. I really don't know what this is. They're acorns? I don't know. But I got these 2 strips of colorwork panels, and when I got them, they were uneven lengths. So as far as I know, this is wool yarn. I did a burn test on a little bit of it, and it burned. It didn't burn. It crumbled like wool or any other animal fiber should. And it also felted when I tried joining on a new end. So it seems to me that this is wool yarn. It's kind of scratchy, but it is, I actually wouldn't mind wearing it. So I'm not that sensitive to scratchy wool. Again, like I said, don't know what this pattern is. If anyone has any insights into this pattern or what the original knitter was going for, hit me up, because I'm just really curious. So the pattern does involve color work in the flat, and the way the original knitter managed the floats is really interesting. Like, look at that chevron pattern that resulted there. I don't know why these floats are so long. I guess you just had to carry them for that long. And I guess it's kind of like you'd have to kind of go intarsia and just carry the float back and forth, or carry the contrast color back and forth when working flat. I haven't done color work flat before, so I'm not really sure how that would work. And it came to me with the color work mostly complete. I just had to complete the tip of one of these fruit things. But what I have done on it, like I said, the 2 strips of color work, I'm holding one upside down, were uneven lengths when they came to me. One had 7 fruits, one had 5. And so what I did was I cut off one from the 7 and then grafted it onto it. So let me see if I can find where the graft line is. If I can't find it, that's a good indication that I grafted it pretty well. Oh, nope, I found it. Okay, well, so it's really subtle. You can see the stitches are kind of uneven here, and so that's where I grafted this last fruit to the rest of the strip. So now both strips have 6 fruits. And so what I'm working on right now is basically a giant garter rectangle to graft to a giant garter rectangle, which will be the length of these panels, and I will seam it so it lies between the 2 panels. And then I think what I'm going to do is pick up stitches all around the entire thing and just knit ribbing, because what we want out of this, like Kina and I want out of this, and the family of the original knitter, is to have a large rectangle that can be draped over the back of a chair. So that's the vintage chair runner. I'm using, even though this is about worsted weight wool, I'm using US size 3 needles to match the dense gauge that the original knitter has. And I'm not minding it so far. So that's the last project I have to show you. I have a few projects that really don't have much progress to report on. I really need to work on them. But my Rhinebeck sweater, I'm a good way through the sleeves. It's just there's nothing exciting going on, so I'm not bringing it out. So that's it for knitting. Now it's on to spinning. So the first thing I want to talk about in spinning, actually, is probably the biggest thing physically that you'll see. I got a nitty naughty! Nitty naughty! So I ordered a cheap nitty naughty from Knit Picks, and you know what? It does the job. This is their large nitty naughty, which makes 2-yard skeins, and the hand spun that's on it right now, I just wound up because I like using a nitty naughty. It's so fun. And I wanted to stop borrowing my friends and bugging her for it, so I ordered one with my recent Knit Picks order that I'll talk more about later. So this, what's wound onto the nitty naughty right now to be skeined is the Fin Sheep top dyed by Mars of the Brownberry Chronicles podcast. Now it's Hey Brownberry of the Hey Brownberry podcast, and she sent the dyed braid for me to spin, and I'd be really interested in seeing her progress on her half. But basically, this spinning section is going to be a big Sister Strands update. Sister Strands is the name of our collaborative project where we bought undyed comb top from I bought undyed comb top from Rhinebeck of 2 different sheep breeds, and we split it in half, and she dyed her half first and then sent it to me to spin, and then I spun my half first and sent it to her to dye. And we will be doing at some point we'll be doing a final update on the entire project once all the yarn is finished. So this is spun up, and I spun it into singles and then plied for 2-ply yarn, and I got about 282 yards. It's skein. I haven't finished it yet. I need to wash it. But I really like the colors and how they turn out in this skein. It was a very subtly variegated braid of fiber to begin with, because that was just the way that the Fin Sheep took the dye. So the colors get even more kind of muddled when spinning. So it's basically like a semi-solid, warm, nutty brown that I really love, and I wish that there was more of it, and because I would totally wear a sweater made out of this. But it'll probably have to be some sort of cowl, but that's totally fine. Or I can use it as an accent in a sweater. I don't know. I'm not at the planning stage for this yarn yet, but anyway, I said the yardage and the Sister Strands fin is now complete, so it is on to the Sister Strands BFL braid that Mars sent to me to spin, and I haven't been really spinning a lot, so this is the braid the BFL braid that I haven't touched yet, but so you can see the colors are red, brown, and yellow, and these were the same colors that went into the fin braid. So I am really interested to see how this braid will spin up as I'm spinning it. For the fin braid, I took the braid and split it lengthwise down into fourths, and then spun all the fourths into singles and plied 1/4 with 1/4 and 1/4 with the other fourth. So I basically had the two halves plied on themselves, which produced kind of a tonal yarn because the color of the braid was more uniform. So with this braid, because it is more strongly variegated, if I do that same color management, I'm I don't know, the colors might not look so good. I am thinking of fractal spinning this, which I would divide them in half and then divide one of the halves into fourths or maybe even eighths. I don't know. The color repeats are way shorter on this braid. And so I think it would look really good fractal spun. So I am getting ideas from this book that I checked out from my library, which I do want to talk about. This is not going to be a full book review. This is just kind of me looking at a specific section for now. But I've been reading this really great book called Yarnitecture by Jillian Moreno, which is a knitter's guide to spinning, building exactly the yarn that you want. So it is spinning with knitting in mind. And I actually have been pretty terrible about knitting with my hand spun yarn. I haven't ever knit with my hand spun. I have two skeins sitting in my stash that I just want to keep admiring and not knit, but I really should. So I like that even if I'm bad about knitting with these yarns, this book will help me make more knittable yarns. The section of the book I'm looking at is the one that's all about color, since I've been talking and thinking about color management in a braid. So they talk about different preparations of wool. They talk a little bit about the dyer, but the section that's most interesting to me is the color managing a braid's color sequence. So they talk about chain plying, which would preserve the color progression. I don't want a chain ply. I do want barber pulling in this yarn. And okay, I found the section. So this section of the book is called Mixing It Up Within a Braid. And what I really am loving about this book is that they have photographs for everything that they talk about. So this page is comparing two ways of splitting a variegated braid of fiber, and then showing you the spun yarn. So this is fractal spun. This is kind of progression, going with the color progression, kind of creating a gradient effect, and then they show it knit up. And they do a great job of this throughout the book. They show you the spun yarn, well, they show you the fiber, then the spun yarn, then then a knitted swatch. So I've just been getting ideas from this book, and next episode I will talk about this book in more detail and give a more detailed review. But it's probably going to be really positive because I love this book so far, and I'm going to be sad to return it to my library, so I might end up buying my own copy of it. So that's it for spinning. I'm going to take another break, and then I will be back with some acquisitions. It's time for Acquired. So I did get some yarn, but these are all going to go in projects. Nothing is going to stash. So I put in a Knit Picks order. That's the major acquisition here. And I am going to be starting on some Christmas knitting, namely for my parents. They don't watch. So I am in no danger of ruining the surprise here. So I'm going to make socks for both my parents. This color combo of Knit Picks Felici and a coordinating solid in their stroll base is going to be my mom's socks. So this is the colorway, I think it's called Cheshire Grin, like the Cheshire Cat. And I'm going to be making her these self-striping socks with contrasting heels, cuffs, and toes in this color, which is Sprinkle Heather. And I think those two go together really well. My mom likes purple, but I'm not sure what pattern I want to use on the socks yet. I think I might design my own, because I do want something that will work with self-striping yarn, with like kind of an accent going up the side. And honestly, at this point, I'm like, I can bang out socks, and it would take me longer to decide on a pattern than if I just designed it myself and went with the socks. This will be my first time working with Felici, but what I can already tell it's super, super soft. I don't know if it's the same base as Stroll. They both feel really soft to me, and it's just so pretty. I love the colors, and I think it's gonna be so fun to knit up. I think they are different bases though. So both of them are 75/25 superwash merino and nylon, but Stroll is 231 yards to 50 grams, whereas Felici is 218 yards to 50 grams. But this, like the heathery bits in this Stroll will, so you have the main lavender base, but you also have the teals and pinks, which will pick up the colors in the Felici. So I'm just really happy with how this color combo looks in person. I was pretty confident on it when I was picking it out online, but now I'm just even happier. And honestly, like, my mom would love a sweater in this color, so if she likes these socks, then I might make her a sweater sometime down the road. So those are my mom's socks, or will be my mom's socks. My dad's socks, I have a specific pattern picked out, and I've had this in my queue for quite some time. There's a pattern on Ravelry that is, I forgot to write down the exact name and the author, but they are a pair of stranded socks with Star Trek patterning on them. So they have the Federation insignia on the ankles, where you can choose between the Federation and the Klingons. But my dad should be very Federation. He's a Trekkie. He has been a Trekkie since the original series. So he would love this pair of socks. And the yarn that I've picked out is this. This is black. This is Stroll Fingering in black. This is Stroll Glimmer, which has a bit of stellina in it for sparkle, in pomegranate for the accents. I just really love incorporating sparkle into color work. And then the insignia, the silver Federation insignia, will be in this Thunderhead tonal. I definitely don't need the entire skein for that, but I liked the semi-solid quality, the tonal quality of the Stroll instead of just a solid, because I think it will make that insignia really pop and look kind of chromy. So the link to the pattern will be in the show notes with the rest of my projects. So I am just so excited for these two sock projects, and I hope my parents will love them. This is my part of the project. This is my part of my brothers and I collaborate, or we try to every year, on gifts for our parents. And my part this year is making the socks, and I made them pay for the yarn. So I don't really think that's an equal trade, but maybe they'll also make the card or something. I don't know. Whatever. It's a fair trade on my end, because I'll get to make two pairs of socks that I will really enjoy making. And look at that color combo. I chose the red, not because not in the original series, red is red shirts. They're the lowest rank. They're always the one that dies, to show how they're the disposable crewmates that die once they land on the planet, to show how dangerous the environment is. But in the Next Generation TNG, which is the one that we like, the series that we like best as a family, they switched the colors around, probably to combat the stigma of red shirts, so that red was the command color. So the captain, the first mate, they wear this burgundy red. And so I'm sure my dad would enjoy being associated with command, to stroke his ego a bit. And besides so I did order the Nitty Naughty with this order. Besides that, I couldn't resist treating myself to a couple of balls of Felici of my own. I picked this color for myself, for a pair of socks for myself. Okay, so maybe this is stash. I cheated. And this is the colorway Punch Bug. And look at these stripes. They're so pretty. I think this would also look really cute with a contrasting pair, contrasting heels, cuffs, and toes. But I'll have to wait on that. So this would just be in my stash until I can get around to these sock projects. So yeah, okay, I was bad a little, but it's a pretty cheap treat. For Felici is pretty, Knit Picks overall is pretty affordable, so yeah, I was good. So that's the Knit Picks order. And then my next acquisition is also part acquisition, part prize announcement. Like I said, the spindle along is now over, so the prizes are in. I ended up getting 2 braids of fiber. The winner will get to pick one of the 2 from a dyer called Curly Cues. It's spelled like this. Here's her business card. It's such a cute name, Curly Q's. I always like a good pun. So I got 2 braids of her panda top. She sells through Facebook and Instagram, so she doesn't have an Etsy. But you should totally follow her on Facebook because she dyes some amazing colors. And they come in sets of 4, so if you need to spin up a sweater quantity, you can just buy up a lot. But I bought one from 2 different... I brought one each from 2 different lots. This teal lot, which is gorgeous, and it's a little lighter than her pictures were, but I mean, I'm still super happy with the colors. Actually, it varies between like teal, minty green, pure like oceany blue, and I've never spun with panda before. I can see the streaks of the bamboo fiber in it, and I can't wait to spin one of these up myself. This is why I buy 2 things when I when I do a giveaway, because you make the decision for me and I get something to keep, and you get something too. The second braid is this orange brown braid, which is just also super beautiful, and this will be such a pretty yarn, and it will be soft, and it will probably be, if you spin it, if that's your thing, it would make great sock yarn. So the winner of the spindle along, which I will announce in the thread in the Ravelry group and private message, will choose one of these. So to know your choices, you need to watch this episode. So winner of the spindle along, pick one of these, and then I will send them to you. And that's it for acquired. And that's really it for the yarn fiber crafty bits of the podcast. I'm gonna do a quick life update. There's nothing really going on, not like last episode where I told stories and then talked about my projects, but life updates. So I guess 2 developments. My roommate moved out, so now I have the apartment to myself, and that means I get the craft room. At some point I'll do a tour when it's finished. So I'm not really spending money on bringing out on extra furniture or anything. I might get a futon for it. That'd be nice. To have an extra sitting area to sit and knit in. The main piece of the craft room that is missing is my future spinning wheel, which I'm saving up for. And anyway, I'm just excited. At some point I'll do a tour of it when it's finished. But yeah, I am really looking forward to living by myself. I am a person who needs lots of alone time, and now that I have a living area to myself, I get to be alone as much as I need to be. And then the second thing is I have a new restaurant job. I'm not going to name it at all, but basically it's just, it might take up some time from my schedule, and honestly, the tips kind of suck, but you know what? It's paying the bills, and I am currently financially stable, which is great. And now that, getting to a better place, now that I'm in a better place, and I feel like I've recovered from my abusive student teaching program, I've been researching graduate schools because I think I do need to go back to school. I've been working on something my friend calls a personal mission statement, and this friend I really admire for his focus and drive in life, and when talking to him, he suggested that I create a mission statement for myself, kind of stating my mission in life and what I want to do, and kind of like deciding on my own purpose, which is really empowering to begin with. But also, I think it's kind of scary to me. It takes a lot of commitment. But he kind of summed up his mission, and I don't really feel comfortable revealing that publicly. But it was vaguely stated. It was general enough that you can rationalize a lot of your his career steps to fit into his mission statement, but also narrow enough to, eliminate some some possible actions that you might take or a major decision. It's a guide. So I think for me, it really helped to ask it. When I was thinking, I'd be like, when I was thinking, I thought that it would be really nice to have something to kind of check myself against. How does this decision, if I go one way, how is that consistent with my mission statement, my mission in life? Is this consistent? Is this fulfilling my mission? And I'm not done with my mission statement yet, but I have a few key words. I know that's in phrases. I know that I want to incorporate, as I said in the intro of my episode, I want to incorporate some science, art, and social justice into my career path and my life, not just work. I want to dedicate myself to kind of keeping the sciences on the path of justice and doing what's good for the people, and not what interests claim to represent the people, but represent private interests like corporations or governments. Basically, I know that my skill set places me in the sciences, and I love the sciences. I also love art. Haven't quite figured out how to incorporate art into my mission statement, but instead of being in art, I think it's more about bringing art to the sciences. So I think keeping the sciences on the path of justice and incorporating beauty into science is part of my mission statement. And so I've been researching graduate programs in physics, which is my undergrad degree, and looking for programs that incorporate research, physics research, with work in outreach programs such as like policy or education, or maybe even doing research in, say, like physics education. So I've been looking into a few programs like that. If you have any leads, or if you're listening to this and you have any leads or ideas for programs that I might look at, just, comment, send me a message or anything. I'm open to ideas. I'm really just brainstorming out loud here. But it's great that I feel like I'm in a place where I can start thinking about my future again instead of just recovering from my past. So I am glad that I'm in that place. And one thing that's been helping me be in that place is something that a friend of mine, my date, has been telling me, is that I do struggle with low self-esteem, and it can be catastrophically low sometimes. And that really fuels my depression. But for a while, the major thought running around my head, the major distorted thought, because when you have mental illnesses, you have a lot of cognitive distortions. Thoughts that are irrational, but may seem rational because they're distorting the reasoning part of your brain. And one of my distortions was that I did not deserve nice things. I deserved the bad things that was happening to me coming from a traumatic background. And it led to me denying myself really like some necessities like food or sleep. And having someone tell me that I deserve nice things, and I am currently dating someone who's been a very positive force in my life, has really helped myself believe that yes, I do deserve good things, and I am worthy of being taken care of taking care of myself, and all of that good stuff that you need to not just survive, but to live. And yeah, that's really where I am. I'm glad I'm doing okay. And I hope you're doing okay too, if you're out there listening. So yes, I want to affirm that for you. You deserve nice things too. You deserve to have your needs met, and you deserve to live. You deserve to live. All right. So on that note, that brings me to wrap up. And this is just last things that I want to touch on before I go. So since I wrapped up the spindle along, I do want to host a make along. I just like organizing things and taking an idea and carrying it out. So my next make along, I want to do something longer, like in the fall or winter, so I also don't have to worry as much about coordinating prizes and stuff. But I also just want a more extended make along. I'm thinking maybe a sweater cal or something, like colorwork sweaters. Would people be interested in that? Yeah, I don't know. Get back to me on that. And then the last thing that I have for you is that just a note about September, what's coming up. I mean, I have a bunch of projects coming up, but towards the end of September and most of October leading up to Rhinebeck, I'm actually going to be on hiatus. My family wants to take me to Taiwan, so it's going to be a really fun trip. And I'm going to see lots of family members, but I am going to be out of the country for about a month. And probably not going to have steady internet access. Like, we're probably staying with my grandma. She doesn't have Wi-Fi. My cousins live nearby. They have Wi-Fi, but I don't know if it'd be feasible for me to record something and then edit it and upload it. Probably not. I might do some shorter vlogs just because you guys should all see the wonder that is Taiwanese food. So yeah, look forward to that. And this was episode 29 of the Pipernell podcast. All right, take care of yourselves. Bye. So give me a break. All right.